Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Dr. Scott Bradley is always with me on Fridays. It is a freedom-loving, fantastic, faith-filled. We're taking America back one heart, one mind, one issue at a time Friday. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. Hopefully it'll be educational and entertaining, to say the least. I'm in Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, ladies and gentlemen, I had a Philly cheesesteak, delicious as could be. And I'm running around checking out all the cool things. I just went in the court area, which was the Supreme Court, at the kind of the first Supreme Court location, if you will, in Philadelphia back in the day for about 9 years or so, and checking out some of the interesting things around, Abraham Lincoln statues, and a lot about George Washington and some of the other leaders, Thomas Jefferson, etc. Just a wonderful place to be in Philadelphia. Why am I here, you ask? Because I'm attending the Braver Angels conference, braverangels.org to learn more. And the interesting thing about Braver Angels is their goal is to bring people together, to set aside the red, the blue, set aside even people's political differences, no matter how extreme those differences may be, and say, hey, can we humanize each other? Can we learn enough about each other to say, hey, we can completely disagree, but we can be kind and agreeable while doing so? Well, that's kind of the mission of Braver Angels. And so they've got people with blue lanyards on, they got people with red lanyards on, then they've got me, and I've got a yellow lanyard, which means I'm independent, I'm not blue or red. And then you've got white lanyards, by the way, and white is, if you don't want people to know what you are, you can go white, or you can go yellow and be independent, or red or blue. And the whole goal is to get people talking, to basically set aside some of these differences and say, is there a way for us to learn about each other in productive ways that make sense? And so braverangels.org is that. I'm at the conference, and I'll be giving you more about that as the next broadcasts unfold. But for now, the Supreme Court is coming to an end for their, quote, year or season, whatever you want to call it. They take the summers off, which is kind of weird. They probably don't really take them off, but it appears to us that they do. But Sam Dorman from the Epoch Times is with us, and he is going to be breaking down some of the Supreme Court decisions that have come out. Welcome back, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, sir. So catch me up a little bit of your responsibility then. Do you watch the court all year long?
Pretty much, yeah. And I was going to say, I'm not sure how much of a summer vacation they'll have, to be honest, because of just how many cases Trump is making them deal with. So, their emergency docket, I think, you might even be full during the summertime.
Yeah, and that's atypical, right?
Yeah, I think, the court has seen a lot of these emergency docket cases coming because partly because there's so many cases against Trump. But and also we've had a lot of really big decisions just on the normal cases. And that's what I think next week, you're going to see the Birthright Citizenship case, some cases about Trump's ability to fire federal officials, the women's sports case, and then just yesterday there was a case about Trump's ability to remove deportation protections for Haitians and Syrians. And so I think that was a pretty big win for him.
So let's talk about that a little bit. One thing is to say you've got to win in court. Another thing is to actually take action and make some of that happen. Do we understand what kind of the plans are coming out of that?
You mean like what's going to happen with the temporary protected status program?
Yeah, so the Haitians and some of these other people now, then, we're going to see a mass deportation of them, or we're going to see a lot nuanced. Once it goes to the Supreme Court, there's no real next step per se. It's really a matter of now policy or kind of discussion about how will it go down is the real question, right?
Well, so this one is actually kind of complicated. I'm not sure what will happen with the people that are here. I know that, for example, they're definitely vulnerable to deportation after the Supreme Court decision because the Supreme Court said that courts basically lack authority to sort of review Trump and the Department of Homeland Security's decision to revoke the status for these people. And so, but it came on the emergency docket. So it was more of a tentative decision by the Supreme Court, just sort of allowing Trump to proceed with this, with these revocations as the case moves through the appeals court, or just the lower courts in general. And so, it's not looking good for the other side. I'll say that. And so, likely there will be some removals and people will end up leaving.
But let's say this, though. Really what the court's kind of saying is this is a congressional discussion, And Congress is the ones that really haven't stepped to the plate on many of these issues. And that's why Trump's getting sued and why the Supreme Court's at odds and they're taking up all these emergency dockets and everything else. And to me, most of this is really a congressional clarifying, congressional action say that, hey, this is the law. This is how people need to act. I mean, the president can carry out the law. The courts can determine if it's lawful or not or whatever else. But at the end of the day, it's Congress that needs to step up to the plate and provide some clarity. What do you say?
Yeah, it's interesting because, Trump's big agenda item is immigration, right? And so there's a big law called the Immigration and Nationality Act that Congress had passed. And this has come up in multiple Trump cases. It came up in just two of the major decisions that were released yesterday. And so it's also kind of complicated because there are provisions in the law that give the executive branch some authority to act on its own. And so one of those, like I said, with the temporary protected status case, this gives a lot of discretion to the Department of Homeland Security to decide whether or not they want to continue giving this protected status. And so they also have a portion in there that says, there's no judicial review of these determinations. And there was a question about, I guess, like how far that extended, and the Supreme Court pretty firmly said, Congress gave a lot of power to the president.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Dorman from the Epoch Times with us, epochtimes.com. He breaks down a lot of the Supreme Court decisions and kind of helps us kind of muddle through the difficult details. Sometimes when it's legalese, it gets complex. And so we're trying to make sense of it as a kitchen table kind of scenario. Dr. Scott Bradley with us as well. Doctor, do you want to chime in here?
Well, it is. There's so many things that need to probably be discussed. I'm always a little bit shocked that a whole branch of the government seems to take a whole season off, but I know what you're saying. They're still going to be rolling around out there and stuff, but it is kind of interesting that we go on a summer season kind of thing. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. They do what they do. But I'm wondering, Sam, I got two Sams on today. It's so confusing to me. I need to keep up. But Sam, are you reading? You want to give a prediction about the Birthright Citizenship deal? Because I think this is a keystone of Trump's interest, and it also is one that I think that they accepted it so they could slap him down. But let's hear what you are hearing there locally, because it is going to be, I think, a watershed moment when they decide what they decide. And a lot of people are holding their breath either way.
Yeah, it's a pretty big case, right? And it's hard to say. I think that, I actually think the court has been trying to sort of avoid this question because, they took up this issue last year, but it was more limited to just judges' authority to block Trump. And now they've been sort of forced to take on the meaty issue of like whether or not Trump's order actually violates the 14th Amendment or federal law. And so I think based on the oral arguments, most people were coming out of that thinking they were probably going to oppose Trump. And it's hard to say how, though, because there's different ways that the ACLU has sort of argued that Trump's order is incorrect. And one is just like interpreting the 14th Amendment, the citizenship clause and what it says about who gets to be a citizen. And then there's another, like I was saying, the Immigration and Nationality Act earlier, that law incorporated the language of the 14th Amendment, but Congress sort of clarified when they passed that law, they didn't want to restrict birthright citizenship in some of the ways that Trump is suggesting. And that's mainly about whether or not someone who, comes to the country and is just a temporary visitor, whether or not they can receive, their children can receive birthright citizenship, or if it has to be, the parents have to have some kind of allegiance through permanent residence in the country.
And Sam, it seems to me that we kind of have a free-for-all right now. Anybody can come to America for any reason and create anchor baby citizenship and do all these different things. And it seems like right now it's kind of a free-for-all and some guidance is necessary. I don't really like guidance from the courts. I'd rather see Congress take action on this and clarify and say, hey, but this free-for-all stuff, in my mind, really is the point. It's got to stop. There's got to be clarity. Right now, it seems like, hey, anything goes. If you can get somehow a toe on America's soil, then you're in like Flynn. That seems to be the biggest Trump pushback, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Trump sees it as, a national security threat as well as just an issue of what's our country going to be made of? It's going to be composed of people who have some kind of allegiance to the country, or is it just going to be anyone that can come across the border? So, but during oral arguments, Chief Justice John Roberts was sort of indicating that he didn't really think that the policy, more practical considerations were going to impact the opinion, and they were just going to stick to the legal interpretation. So and it's even hard to say. Like I said, they could just rule on this federal law rather than actually interpreting the amendment in a more thorough way. And if they do that, I don't think there will be that much guidance, unfortunately, because they're going to just sort of be speaking to the law rather than like giving, a detailed analysis of history and what citizenship means and things like that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I think that's going to be one of the biggest decisions this term.
Dr. Bradley, what they usually do is come up with some splitting hairs scenario where nobody is happy, right?
Well, I'm definitely not going to be happy if it goes the way Sam is saying, because first of all,
Agreed.
the Congress has no backbone. I guess we ought to talk about that when we get back. But sounds like another commercial break. Let's cool our jets for a minute.
Sam Dorman with us, ladies and gentlemen, with the Epoch Times. Dr. Scott Bradley and yours truly breaking it down from Pennsylvania. This is Liberty Roundtable Live.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began. Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Free Water Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Free Water Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
The question is, ladies and gentlemen, will the courts give Trump a win on this situation about anchor babies and about, citizenship and all this kind of stuff? Seems like the case they just kind of adjudicated about deportation and this one are kind of companions, if you will, at the Supreme Court. Do you think the first one that they just adjudicated will have a bearing on the second one, Sam Dorman?
Sorry, which one are you talking about? The temporary protected status?
I'm talking about, the protected status coming up that we'll find out hopefully next week, but also the deportation one. I mean, both of these have to do with whether you can be in America and under what circumstances, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the deportation case is sort of more about a temporary program, but the Birthright Citizenship case, that's really getting to the core of what the 14th Amendment means. And after the Civil War, who did we want to be able to receive citizenship? I think that timing is important too, because Trump has talked about how, this amendment in particular was meant to protect former slaves rather than give citizenship to people who just came across the border.
Anyway, time will tell. I guess we'll have to keep an eye on the ball for that. What else have they come out with recently that we need to kind of break down and interpret here, Sam?
Yeah, sure. There was the Monsanto case yesterday, which was pretty big. That was about, the Roundup weed killer and the ingredient glyphosate. And there's a question of whether or not it caused cancer. And basically the Supreme Court said that there was, the federal law sort of shielded Monsanto in a way because it prevented other states from sort of regulating Monsanto's weed killer beyond what the federal government had already done. So I think that was a pretty big win for them. There are a couple cases about immigration.
Before you go on, Dr.
Sure.
Bradley, do you want to speak to this? I have a big problem with that. The law protects Monsanto from things that might cause cancer for the people. The whole purpose of government is to make sure that we're safe and secure. And the whole purpose of at least the Federal Drug Administration or Food and Drug Administration or the EPA or any of these other groups, like them or dislike them, their whole goal is to keep people safe. And somehow, we've got the government literally protecting Monsanto at the expense of the rest of us, Doctor?
Well, this gets back to the whole deal about you hold your mouth a certain way, and the good old boys get to defend their cronies whatever way they want to. Another holding of your mouth could have found a whole problem with that. I think that the evidence about Monsanto and the glyphosate and all that kind of stuff has been pretty widely accepted around the world. And Trump has, in more recent months, even made executive orders protecting it. And so there has been a good old boy, we're going to take care of you, scratch my back, I'll scratch mine. Now, I understand the arguments. You can't shut them down instantly because the farmers don't have a transition kind of thing to do. But this is, in my opinion, an example of how you can kind of craft any kind of decision you want. It's like the accountant that was hiring, the CEO that was hiring an accountant, and he said to the accountant, there's your final interview question, what's 2 + 2? And the accountant got up and shut the curtains and looked around, and he says, what do you want it to be? And I fear that these are being manipulated, and justice is not being handled in many ways that it should be. And that goes back, we got the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration. And one of the big problems that they had with the king was justice was not being served. And that was a big reason.
Amen to that. So Sam Dorman, really quick, do you think that this is a good old boy money game thing? Seems like it to me. Is that, why would you protect a Monsanto when the evidence is so strong?
It's hard to say. I think because one of the things that Justice Kavanaugh, for example, highlighted in his a majority opinion, and this was a 7-2 opinion, by the way. The dissent was kind of mixed with Jackson and Gorsuch. But besides that, he was talking about how the EPA has repeatedly declined to issue some kind of warning for glyphosate even after reviewing it and reviewing its safety. That being said, though, it's an interesting time because RFK Jr. is the head of HHS, and just before oral arguments, he was in Congress saying that that glyphosate caused cancer. And he's also sued Monsanto as well. So it's kind of, I think it's still, I don't really, to be honest, I don't know much about the science, so I can't speak to the science, but I know that.
But at the end of the day, the real point is, even though we've got an adjudication from the Supreme Court on this, strange compared to other cases, usually when the Supreme Court rules, that's kind of the end of something. In this case, though, because there's other lawsuits and maybe future evidence coming out or, studies and documentation about the scientific reality, this one we may not have seen the end of, right?
Right, that's right. It's based on whether or not the federal government has already regulated this area. So the EPA could change its mind. There could be a new law in Congress. I think Anna Paulina Luna was even just talking about proposing a law related to this. So, things could change easily.
All right. What else is on the docket we need to cover?
I think next week there's probably going to be the women's sports decision, and then there's also some cases about Trump's ability to fire federal officials. I think those are probably the two biggest next week.
Dr. Bradley, you're fired, and I'm wondering what you think about the women. Maybe we'll let you go into sports, Doctor.
No, this stuff about, this sex perversion and all that kind of stuff, the DNA is pretty stout on it. And I just find it absolutely astounding that we have become so completely confused through our education system. I'm quite confident that this is a problem. But I would expect they're going to say, women competing against men is probably something that they can regulate. But I just find it absolutely astounding that we have to get to the point that somebody is wrangling in front of the Supreme Court over something that seems so absolutely elemental. It's embedded in your DNA, and I'm just utterly shocked at how confused the nation seems to be at this point. When we were in the military, we used a slightly different term, but you'll get the message. Mush for brains seems to be the primary focus today in the world, and I am absolutely astounded. The people say, we're going to take this to the mat. We're going to the Supreme Court. And we could talk at length about how Jackson handled Marshall and stuff like that back in his administration. And firing people, this goes back to Jackson too. Some of these things that they tried to take care of back in the 1880s with all sorts of protected statuses and everything like that. It is bizarre to me how everybody's wrangling to pull the levers of government in their behalf when good common sense seems like it ought to rule, and it doesn't.
At the expense of settled logic and reality and everything else. So Sam Dorman, just a question for you then. It's amazing to me that we put this in the hands of just so few, because if it's a 5-4 decision, you can get a win. So really 5 people out of 330 million people decide. Congress sits simply sidelined while 5 people decide it all, right?
Yeah, it does look like that because, this is based on these state laws. So you're talking about all 50 states, and the way that the Supreme Court is going to, rule, it's going to determine whether or not those laws are considered unconstitutional. It's an interesting time because this is also coming after the Scarametti decision, which was about, quote unquote, gender affirming care and the ability to ban that, states banning that for minors. But I think it'll be probably like 6-3 in favor of Idaho and West Virginia, which are the states that have imposed these bans on women's sports. So I think it's going to end up, social conservatives are going to have a win in this one.
So do you think they're going to let women compete in men's sports then? Men compete in women's sports?
No, I think they're going to have say that states can basically segregate sports based on sex, and they're going to say that it's not unconstitutional discrimination to allow people who identify as quote unquote transgender to compete in these or to block them from competing with girls.
So you're saying that men are men, women are women, and it's going to probably stand that way?
I think at least in Justice Alito's eyes, right? I don't know.
Sure.
I'm not sure what the others will think, but yeah. And that's the thing. I think they're going to try and be a little bit restrained in how they define. I don't think they're going to try and define, for example, what a woman is, but I think that they'll kind of.
Yeah, they're afraid to do that, aren't they, sir?
Yeah, it seems. It's hard to say. There was some questioning from Justice Alito during oral arguments that were pretty intense. I think, kind of getting at that question of biology and that's also a really big issue in this case because you're talking about different bone structure and all these things like hormones and just like how much I think biology is really coming to the fore, especially with this case.
Amen to that. Okay, Trump's famous for saying you're fired on The Apprentice and everything else, and he really likes to say that in government too. Do you think that's going to be upheld? Can he say you're fired, or are they going to say no, you don't have that authority, President? Isn't
that funny though? Because he said that during The Apprentice, and now this is like, I think this is going to be part of his legacy, is overturning this precedent that basically prevented presidents from firing people because there's this old Supreme Court decision called Humphrey's Executor, and it said that Congress could create these laws that sort of conditioned or limited the president's ability to fire people within independent agencies like the FTC. And so Trump's firing of the FTC commissioner last year is what is before the Supreme Court now. And I think that they're going to end up overturning that precedent and basically just say presidents have a lot more power. Congress can't restrict them that much. But I'll say this. I think, the other case we're waiting on is the Federal Reserve case, Trump's ability to fire Lisa Cook, Federal Reserve governor. And I think that case is going to go differently because the Supreme Court views the Federal Reserve as more independent than these so-called independent agencies within the executive branch.
Yeah, so as CEO of the country, one would be under his purview, if you will, and the other would be, hey, it jeopardizes the independence of the Fed. Now, I don't know that I agree with that. I'm just telling you that's kind of the reasoning. Sam, Dr. Bradley, what do you say to these two?
Well, again, it's pretty perverse. The whole thing, the existence of the Federal Reserve is not just questionable, it's unconstitutional. And the private banking consortium that does for profit with our economy is a bigger issue with the whole thing. But they try and maintain this image that the Federal Reserve has some kind of sterling standard that nobody can touch. And I think it's all Bravo Sierra, but that's, kind of a more direct approach, like the mush for brains.
Sam Dorman, our guest, ladies and gentlemen. He's at the Epoch Times doing a phenomenal job breaking down the details of the Supreme Court. Thank you, Sam. We'll have you back soon, my friend.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
I'm Sam Bushman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm broadcasting live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the BraverAngels.org conference. To learn more about Braver Angels, interesting group doing some phenomenal things. I'll tell you that right now. We're praying for the Supreme Court that they get these things right. We don't need the BS that Dr. Bradley is speaking of. We need honest people standing up with the supreme law of the land and our ethical moral code based on God's laws. You follow me? All right. God save the Republic of the United States of America.
protecting your liberties. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. It is a story of triumph and tragedy in earthquake-stricken Venezuela. Triumph when more people are rescued from the debris, and tragedy when more victims' bodies are recovered.
The agonizing wait continues for relatives of the missing following the two powerful earthquakes that struck Venezuela in the space of a minute. Some survivors have been found alive under the cement and twisted metal. Graciela Mora was pulled from the ruins of a building in the city of La Guaira. When the earthquake began, I clung so tightly to the doorframe that I broke my finger, she said. But the floors gave way and my friend was gone.
The BBC's Will Grant says a death toll, at least 589, several thousand people injured, thousands more unaccounted for. Secretary of State Rubio says the U.S. is sending aid, including expert personnel, to Venezuela.
We've already stood up our disaster response teams at the Department of State and our humanitarian efforts. It's something we did very well in Jamaica after that storm, and it's something we're really prepared to do now. So I've already spoken to Secretary Hegseth.
The Pentagon dispatching a pair of naval vessels and a couple of aircraft to Venezuela. Despite Iran's drone attack on a cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz, President Trump says the strategic waterway is open. He also says Iran, very badly, wants a deal with the U.S. The Texas State Board of Education set to vote on a required reading list for more than 5 million public school students that includes stories and passages from the Bible. The board gave preliminary approval to that list earlier this week. The final vote set for later today. Californians will vote in November on a controversial proposal imposing a one-time tax on billionaires. Governor Gavin Newsom among those opposed to the measure, arguing it will drive the super rich and their income tax revenue out of the state. On Wall Street, the Dow down 109 points. More on these stories, townhall.com.
Did you really think Pure Talk was just going to sit back and watch America turn 250 years old without doing something awesome to celebrate? Of course not. That's why they're raising $250,000 for America's Warrior Partnership by the end of July. America's Warrior Partnership is on the front line of preventing veteran suicide. They've had extraordinary success, and here's how you can help. When you switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk this month, you'll be invited to round up to support America's Warrior Partnership. No pressure, but if you do, Pure Talk will match your donation dollar for dollar. And to further celebrate 250 years of our extraordinary democratic republic, Pure Talk is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $34.99 a month. Dial pound 250, say Mike Rowe. That's pound 250, say Mike Rowe. And happy birthday to us.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, by having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems at all times and in all places is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to have you along. It is Sam Bushman and Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com on your radio. Spread the word, share the love, tell your friends, libertyroundtable.com. And we're available all over the place. We do radio and TV both, so check out our TV shows on YouTube and Rumble and X and Truth Social and just about everywhere. And then our radio shows available at libertyroundtable.com and all kinds of fine podcast services all across the country and live on AM and FM radio stations across the country as well. Spread the word, share the love, would you please? I'm live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm attending the braverangels.org conference, learning more about their working to bring people together. And I really appreciate their efforts to do so. The question becomes, how do you bring people together but not lose sight of really important discussions about principle, important discussions about the rule of law or moral realities? In other words, God's law, moral realities that are set forth, moral imperatives. How do you have conversations but not jettison those fundamental needs or those realities? That's the question, and I'm learning about how they're doing it, and it's fascinating to learn about, and I give them credit for their efforts and pray that I can hold on to my principles in a way that's meaningful and productive, at the same time give grace where grace makes sense. That's really the deal. Learn from braverangels.org. Dr. Scott Bradley's with me. freedomsrisingsun.com is his website, and he had his incredible weekly webinars, Q&As on the Constitution, etc., that he has every week, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Get your ticket to ride at freedomsrisingsun.com, or you can also just check it out on Rumble, or you can check it out on BitChute. It's at several places. Look for Freedom's Call for that. freedomsrisingsun.com. You can also get his collegiate series To Preserve the Nation there as well. Dr. Bradley, I hear you had a ripping time last night with a bunch of topics.
Well, we really went into overtime, actually, and we've never run out of topics, that's for sure, on any of these events.
And when does Dr. Bradley not go into overtime? It's like a soccer game where we just keep putting time on the clock.
Well, why not? I mean, if these things are important. I find
you're right about that.
Yeah. So
the Fauci Facade was one of the big ones you kicked off with, right?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the big questions came from what Tulsi Gabbard revealed in her last moments in office about these intelligence things that you and I talked about. That was more than 6 years ago. I mean, it was early in the COVID con thing, the spring of 2020, and the stuff that she brought forth was absolutely confirming of all the stuff we talked about. I got completely.
It's almost like she was listening to our show for her bullet points, wasn't it?
Absolutely, unquestionably, and I wish she'd brought them forth sooner. I mean, yeah,
Amen.
I can sit and whine about that and everything, but as she went out the door, she confirmed what you and I talked about beginning in March, April of 2020. I was deplatformed because of that, because of the the government's efforts with all of the social media people and everything like that. But the fact of the matter is, I think that this opens a door wherein Fauci may be, well, actually, Rand Paul is subpoenaing him to bring him in for testimony. He was given that phony baloney pardon from the auto pen. I believe that needs to be brought into question. But overarching everything, I believe everybody deserves due process. So, you can't just run with this and get the pitchforks and the bonfires going and everything like that. But the fact of the matter is, this man is guilty of crimes against humanity if they're true. I mean, Josef Mengele, the guy that was the angel of death in the Nazi concentration camps, Che Guevara, the physician that Castro used, that executed a lot of his political prisoners. These guys were little blips on the screen in comparison to the millions upon millions that have suffered, even died around the world, even in the United States. The economies that were destroyed, the trillions of dollars of damage, the burdens that were cast on society, the liberties that were lost. I mean, we could go on and on and on. The ongoing challenges because of the so-called vaccine that neither prevented, it was not safe nor effective, and it continues to be marketed, pushed down our throats every time you walk into a grocery store with a pharmacy and come in and get your shot, But the fact of the matter is, there's a long road ahead of us.
Was that an intentional way that we faced too, with the leakage of that virus in the first place, or was it an accident or that? But I think the real issue is it was intentionally released.
Well, he was doing gain of function. I mean, against U.S. law, gain of function research that he was funding. It sounds like at the University of North Carolina, and it was moved offshore when it got too hot to handle. I mean, this whole thing has been a travesty of breaking the law as well as imposing an absolute oppressive destruction upon humanity. I think it needs to be gotten.
There's no question. So do you think that Rand Paul and some of those people that want accountability, I being one of them, do you think that we'll really see that, or do you think they're just going to let Fauci as the rich government walk into the sunset?
Sadly, I have never seen a satisfactory outcome from any of these hearings, and all of this hand-wringing and this, oh, ain't it awful kind of stuff usually goes there for some kind of sideshow Bob kind of thing. Every time I get into one of these things, I hear in my mind, clowns on the left of me, jokers to the right, here I am stuck in the middle again. I mean, that old song. I just think the clowns and the jokers are running things. I take my hat off that Rand is trying to do this, but this is something that never needs to be done again. Now, I know
amen to that. Senators to back Rand Paul with this thing. Right now, as far as I can tell, I mean, I'm not saying he has no support, but you don't hear much about any support. It seems like he's just kind of going it alone. And what you've got to get is a gaggle of 10, 15, 20, 30 senators that are serious about this. And then, seriously, until then, I think they just kind of mock Rand Paul, let him have his little pony show behind the scenes and whatever, and then they kind of mock him and let it go. I mean, they do that with so many things, and that doesn't mean that I'm downing his efforts as much as I'm downing the system that pretty much says, hey, we'll let you have your say, Rand, but it won't mean a hill of beans at the end of the day, right?
Well, and quite frankly, now Utah's maybe a little bit of an anomaly in so many ways. Now, with the primaries that went on, they booted the guys that were involved with the data center so heavily. The president of the Senate and a couple of county commissioners. But by and large, the establishment clones, I call them empty suits, and I know a lot of people are offended by that, but they are truly empty when it comes to making a difference in the upholding of principles and doing the right thing.
Yeah, they're not interested in what the people say. They're not interested in the rule of law. They're interested in their agenda, and they'll do whatever by hook or by crook they got to do to get it done, right?
And they keep getting reelected by the people that vote in Utah. Now, Utah does some interesting things with their elections, and we could talk at length about why it's all stacked against the principles. But the fact is that the vast majority of those in the most senior positions appear to me at both state and the federal level, and largely at the county levels too, to be the kind of people that go along to get along, and it's, tell me what the big boys really want and tell me how I can profit and I'll be there. I mean, that sounds like a real curmudgeonish way. It sounds almost like I don't know. It's just...
Well, but you can show me rare instances. You can show me rare instances where that's not the case, though. So even though it might be curmudgeonish, it is based in true evidence until the cows come home. What did you guys cover next, Doctor?
Well, this one is an interesting one. James Carville, who has been a pundit. I mean, he's been a strategist, a tactician, and been the center stage of Democrat politics for decades. In fact, he's getting old too. But he's been predicting that President Trump's going to resign before Easter of 2027. And his logic is quite interesting that he's putting forth on that. And that question came up last night. I mean, that's Easter. I mean, that's
understand the question, the point.
What, say again?
Back into his logic so people understand what he's actually saying.
Okay, well, what Carville is saying is that when the November elections, the midterm elections occur, it will be a crushing defeat for the Republicans. We could talk about that at length and why. But this is his position, that it's going to take the stuffings out of Trump. He believes Trump's people are shielding him from the absolutely devastating polls that are going on and the risks that are going to be there for this election. And what's happening is that he thinks that after that there'll be so many investigations, so many intimidating attempts to impeach him and all those kind of things. He saw this happen with Bill Clinton when Bill was in. Bill was a younger man, had more energy, vigor, and all that kind of stuff, a lot of other things that we could say that were damaging. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't believe Trump has the vigor and energy to stick this one out, and he may just say, I'm done with this. Carville's position is that by, Easter, he's going to...
Yeah, all things will be against him. Hold on, we'll talk about it more in seconds. Dr. Scott Bradley with me. I'm Sam Bushman. You're listening to Liberty Roundtable Live.
Get ready to be part of something incredible. We're breaking barriers and delivering the powerful stories that mainstream media won't touch. Your support is what fuels our mission to revolutionize journalism and bring you the truth. Join our passionate community of changemakers by donating at libertynewsradio.com today. Together, we're creating the future of news.
The Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit legal foundation committed to protecting our unalienable right to publicly acknowledge God. The Foundation for Moral Law exists to restore the knowledge of God in law and government and to acknowledge and defend the truth that man is endowed with rights not by our fellow man, but by God. The foundation maintains a twofold focus. First, litigation within state and federal courts. Second, education, conducting seminars to teach the necessity and importance of acknowledging God in law and government. How can you help? Please make a tax-deductible contribution, allowing foundation attorneys to continue the fight. You may also purchase various foundation products as well at morallaw.org. Located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 founded by Judge Roy Moore. Please partner with us to achieve this important mission. morallaw.org.
Back with you live, everybody, at Sam Bushman and Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com. We're talking about his incredible webinars every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Mountain. Join them, learn more, freedomsrisingsun.com, or watch them after the fact on Rumble and BitChute and everywhere else under the name Freedom's Call. We're talking about this idea that James Carville is speaking out now, saying Trump will resign or be basically kicked out. He'll probably resign, but he'll maybe be impeached along the way. He says it's going to be a bloodbath in November. The Democrats are going to take over. The Republicans are going to suffer big losses. And then Trump's going to be kind of, against the wall. It's kind of like a, fighter cage, and Trump's in the corner just getting beat on until he just gives up. That's kind of what he's saying is going to happen. Do you think that's the case, Doctor?
Well, the exact scenario that plays out is yet to be understood completely, but his position is that it will be a resignation, very much like what Nixon did back in August of '74, and that Vance will take over the job of president. Vance will then issue a pardon to both Trump and his family. And it'll, the idea will be just like Ford today, well, let's put this behind us, let's move forward, let's quit wrangling about this, and let's just move ahead. And that's Carville's position, and I can kind of
what's your take? Do you think it's right?
I'm not sure I'm going to stand by the Easter of 2027 thing, but I think the stuffing's going to be hard.
All right, here's my response to it. Trump is like the Teflon man, and so I don't believe that that'll happen. I believe that Trump has a unique ability to withstand virtually anything, and he's accomplished too much for the establishment for them to take him out like that. They'll let him, leave with dignity. He's moved forward the ball in many ways for liberty, but in many ways he's really moved the ball forward for tyranny. And he's done enough of what the establishment wants, I'm convinced, and he continues to move more towards establishment efforts every single day. We thought the second term was going to take the gloves off and get it done. The second term has been really more establishment than the first term even. And so I'm convinced he does enough of their bidding to where hey, they won't do that to him and put him in shame. He's done enough for them, and they'll let him go out into pasture. I think what they'll do is put together a Rubio-Vance team, and there's a good chance they'll win unless we see something significant for the Democrats in 28. In the meantime, though, I do believe they'll super lame duck him, and they'll hobble most of what he's trying to accomplish. They'll just stop the bad part of Trump and let the other part continue in kind of a compromise. That's just my take, Doctor.
Well, and like I say, which crystal ball are you looking at? I'm just telling you what Carville's saying, and he really is mouthy, and he doesn't back off. He's tenacious. He's a dog on a bone, all that kind of stuff. But I think it'll be somewhere between where it is now and what Carville's saying. But I do think that after the midterm elections, I think that if they go as badly as many of the polls are indicating,
Trump will be hobbled.
It will really, really. I mean, Trump had an opportunity. His initial
and it's lost now, but it's ultimate lame duck to say the least. All right, what'd you cover next? I want to make sure to get to a couple of these.
Okay, well, I don't know if we need to talk about this one, the 1973 War Powers Resolution that looked like it went through both houses, and then Trump took a couple of senators into his Situation Room and spanked them, and they came out and changed their vote. And disappointingly, Rand Paul was one of them. I mean, I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on that one, but the War Power Resolution is something that is looming heavily. Congress has been spineless as usual. Trump has continued to, we're in negotiations. I'm quite confident that when he took him in the Situation Room, he just basically said, look, guys, we're really close to wrapping this up. Do we have to do this embarrassment? And I was shocked a little bit that Rand Paul was one that changed his vote. But another thing we talked about was
It
Mike
makes
Johnson.
you wonder really quick. It makes you wonder really quick if there's some intel that we don't have that might make us see differently. Not that I believe that, I'm just wondering. Or it makes you wonder if there's just a compromise and does he have a blackmail ability over them? What's the reason that it Rand Paul? Because Rand Paul, you would hope like Ron Paul would have stood strong against the war mentality. And so it's kind of interesting to see that change. You kind of wonder what's really caused it. I sure wish I could get Rand on the radio and get the details.
Oh man, do I? I mean, somehow he spanked him, and they
That's
came
for
out.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, we had another deal about Mike Johnson's take on the primaries and the communists and socialists were winning. I had my own take on that as it got into the review.
Well, give us the 30-second on Mike's take, and then I want to hear yours.
Well, Mike came out. I mean, he had a call with Trump and he had a all hands on deck with the Republicans in Congress. And then he called this 20-minute news conference and basically said the Democrats are toast. They're the people that won their primaries are communists and socialists. People are going to accept the common sense Republican approach. Happy days are here again. And it was really a kickoff pep rally for the
Yeah, it was
Republicans.
really the opposite of Carville, 100%.
It was, but here's my take. I kind of suspect that the Democrats that got tossed for the Democratic Socialist kind of guys were tossed because they were incumbents. And I suspect that there's a lot of that mentality going on in the Republican Party too. And I think that Mike Johnson was trying to put this happy spin on things. Look at this, woo-woo, we're going to win and everything's going to happen in 2028. You're going to see us go into 300 years of, whatever. I mean, the Fourth Reich arrives or whatever. I know I'm overstating
Johnson's
that.
delusional.
Yes, but here's the deal. I think that there's a lot of throw the bums out mentality, both on the Democrat side and on the Republican side. And I think that it's a long ways from being happy days are here again for the Republicans, because they're seeing the clowns on the left and jokers on the right that the Democrats are putting forth in their primaries. And they're honestly, I have no idea if they could bring a viable candidate to office in 2028. And there's arguments and discussions. Well, are the Republicans going to use Rubio or are they going to use Vance? And some of those things are yet to be revealed based upon success of some of the negotiations and stuff.
I'm predicting a joint ticket.
It may be. But did you see, what was that one Massey-Carlson ticket that somebody was suggesting?
Yeah, I actually would support that quite a bit, believe it or not. I don't think it's perfect, but I would support that. The question is, would it be Massey-Carlson or Carlson-Massey? Massey's got more political whatever, but Carlson's got more popularity for sure. So I don't know how that would go down, but that would be at least a unique third opportunity or option to consider and stuff like that. And so, we'll see how that breaks down. But that's kind of at least so far, at least somebody that I could maybe consider. I don't think they're perfect, but I think they're better than any alternative we've got.
Well, some of the big name, very prominent, formerly MAGA, and they're maybe still MAGA, Make America Great Again, but they've just, basically given up on Trump and upon the establishment, trail that he's on, with the war and the economy and this making Israel great again, whatever. Anyway, so guys like Carlson and some of those very prominent former supporters of Trump. And who does Trump have? Come on, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro. It's kind of like, huh? But at any rate, these are all still in the mix, and I'm very interested to see. Because Carlson said he bailed on the GOP. He's done with them.
And I don't blame him for that as well, because you've got the old school, George Bush style, and then you got the modern day Donald Trump style, and neither of them seem to fit my view of what we ought to have for a constitutional leadership and stuff like that. So, I get Carlson's point, and I get that we feel betrayed. That's for sure. All right, what else did you cover?
Well, there's this bipartisan bill of this affordability for housing that passed both houses, went on to Trump, and he's holding it hostage for the Save America Act. And Representative Anna Luna, as in Luna, whatever you want to finish that with, has told that she's going to try and stop every activity in the House until Trump gets his Save America. And she is talking about putting it into the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a must-pass bill. And this is just absolutely typical of what gets stuffed into that thing. It's a complete travesty where they say, oh, we got to support the military, we got to do $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion, whatever it's going to be. So let's stuff all these other things in there that she's trying to say this is a must-pass bill and this will pass.
And they will double down and spy on all of us and put all kinds of junk in the bills and everything else. We're just seeing business as usual, spending us into oblivion, ignoring constitutional, God-given, inalienable rights, putting our freedoms and our liberties and our stability and our safety on the altar. And sadly, it seems like everyone's going for it. And until the American people punish those who do that by kicking them out of office and replacing them, we're going to see business as usual, Doctor. That's my prediction.
Right. And then, and I know we're really out of time, but another very senior Pentagon military officer is biting the dust. In the last year and a half-ish, we've probably lost 6 3- and 4-star officers. Stalin did this in 1930s.
Yeah, if you don't go along with the pro-war agenda, then you're out, buddy.
That's right. And so Stalin put his country under the a real risk factor. And apparently, this guy, we could talk at length about him, Chris Donahue. Whether he did everything right or didn't everything right, what are we doing with our senior leadership? There's a lot of, Navy captains and Army colonels and whatever. They're both 06. They're one step below the first star. I think a lot of they're not really young, but they're bright Navy captains and colonels that are saying, is there a future here? Should I go outside and join one of the national defense companies and make big bucks and stuff like that? I've known people that did that. I knew people that turned down their star because of a lot of reasons. But the fact of the matter is, I think that they're becoming a Praetorian Guard, which is basically a guard to keep the establishment in power that was in the Roman Empire. And it's a pot stirrer, man. There's a lot of things to think about that's going on right now.
We shall keep an eye on the ball, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to check out Dr. Bradley's webinars every Thursday night, freedomsrisingsun.com. You can also get his Collegiate Series To Preserve the Nation there as well. Dr. Bradley, thank you so much, sir.
All right. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sam Bushman. This is the one and only hard-hitting news the network refused to use style. We call it Liberty Roundtable Live. LibertyRoundtable.com. Spread the word, share the love, have a delightful weekend, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.